Welcome in. It's time for an Atlanta Soccer Tonight special here on the 92.9 The Game YouTube channel, on the Off the Woodwork podcast, all of the places that this will end up. We're digital. We're everywhere. This is how this goes. And it's been one of those kinds of mornings here in Atlanta where everything is happening all at once. Tata Martino is back in charge of Atlanta United. A reunion that, Mike, we talked about it back in 2018, and I think it's fascinating to revisit how everything played out in the September through December portion of 2018, where the news starts to come out that Tata Martino is not going to come back for 2019. Then they go on a run. Well, they lose on decision day and don't win the Supporters Shield. Then they go on a run in the playoffs and win everything. And it's a parade and it's a celebration. And then he goes to the Mexico job. And we think, will we ever see Tata Martino in Atlanta again in charge of this team? Probably not. No. There really wasn't a thought about that happening. And here we are in 2025, getting ready for the 2026 season with Tata taking over again.
I remember where we were when we found out. Do you?
San Jose, right?
We were in San Jose. We were in the lobby at the hotel in San Jose, and we were getting ready to do that crazy game that night. We had no idea what we were walking into that night. That's the only time you and I have been to San Jose. But
that's true.
That was hours before that nutso game where it appeared to be 4-1 San Jose, and Atlanta United actually ended up winning 3-2. Or 4-3. I'm sorry, 4-3. And we were in the lobby, and we were getting all the what was it? The Bumbas on Twitter. The reports were starting.
Yes. They were starting to come out of Argentina. Was dropping bombas out of Argentina that day. Yes.
Yeah, starting to come out of Argentina, and I think the statute of limitations has passed now. So I think it's okay for me to kind of go behind the curtain a little bit. I remember, and let me give you the end of the story before I give you the backstory. This was the day we found out that Tata was not going to renew his contract with Atlanta United. He would be leaving. Mm-hmm. I remember the day before. Remember, you and I, this was back before we had Fun Country. So we were flying commercial, and we got to San Jose the day before. And my hotel room, that's such a good hotel, by the way, one of the best in the league. My hotel room was next door to Darren Eales. And as we were checking into the hotel, I was walking into my room, and Darren was coming out of his room, and he was wearing a training kit. He was wearing, a kit. He was wearing shin guards and cleats and everything like that. And I thought, wow, that's weird. And we found out later, and again, I hope this isn't like violating the statute of limitations. Darren was actually running trainings because there was all this stuff going on in the background, or at least he was running trainings in San Jose, because there's all this stuff going on in the background with Tata and, I guess confirmation starting to trickle out that he was not going to renew his contract. So It is funny thinking back to that day, September of 2018. God, that was nice. It was only 37 years old. Oh, to be 37 again and have less gray hair and
I've given up thinking about
pounds lighter and all that. Oh man, those were fun times. But to your point, Jason, I thought, there's no way we're going to see Tata in MLS again. He's going to go probably coach for a national team, and eventually, we found out it was Mexico, but he's probably going to go coach for a national team. Maybe if he coaches again at the club level, maybe he goes back to Newell's, maybe, and he rides off into the sunset there. And now look at what has happened November 6, 2025, and he's back. He's been in MLS. He took a year off. Now he's back. And look, I don't know how this is going to turn out. I think, and we'll get into this, I think this is a much, much different challenge than what Tata had to go through as the coach of an expansion team. I'm not saying it's more challenging, but it's a different challenge. So I don't know how this is going to work out. But it is kind of fun for me to reminisce about how things were when Tata was here the first time. And can it be that way again? Even if it doesn't necessarily replicate from a win and loss standpoint, but can it feel like that again? it's exciting to think about. And I think that feeling will be there at some point this year, hopefully, or this coming season, hopefully sooner rather than later.
Yeah, if you're just getting caught up on kind of what Tata's been up to since he left Atlanta at the end of the 2018 season, he took the Mexico job. It was a lot of money and it was a much lighter workload in the sense of being a national team manager versus being a club manager. Um, he's a manager who doesn't stay in places for very long because he works very intensely. This is something that Pep Guardiola has talked about. Other managers have talked about. You are not going to have a lot of time off when you're running a club and you're in charge of things. Tata's not going to have a lot of time off, probably starting pretty soon until the end of the season. Now, this upcoming season is a little weird with the World Cup in the middle of it, and there will be a break, but he's going to be looking at players. He's going to be also still running training sessions because we'll get the schedule here soon enough, but they're going to be back pretty soon towards the end of the World Cup, you would assume. So they're going to be training over that period of time. It's going to be a weird calendar, but he's going to work a lot. Well, when he came to Atlanta, he was coming off of 2 extremely intense years with the Argentine national team where they lost in Copa America finals in back-to-back penalty shootouts. And it was, I think, emotionally draining. Came to Atlanta, had a very intense 2 years here. You think from 2017 to 2018, working with Darren Eales, with Carlos Bocanegra to build that roster from scratch, going from a good first year to a great second year and winning everything. Then the Mexico job comes up. It's a lot of money and less work. Makes sense. He won the 2019 Gold Cup straight away. And then it didn't really progress from there. He reached the final in 2021 with the Gold Cup. They got to the World Cup in 2022. They were knocked out in the group stage. I think the generation of talent in Mexico was kind of in a down period a little bit. I don't think this is purely on Tata Martino, although some of the Mexican media will argue with you on that because they argue about everything. I don't think he had a whole lot to work with. And it ended in kind of a disappointing way in that World Cup. Then he took the job in Miami around the time that Lionel Messi was arriving, along with the rest of the Super Friends. And he won Leagues Cup straight away in the summer of 23. Had the Supporters Shield last year, was bounced out of the playoffs by Atlanta United, and then stepped away for personal reasons. And there was always the talk about he's not retiring, he's not done, but he needed time off in 2025. And now he has decided this is the opportunity he's going to take. There was a lot of talk about a verbal agreement with LAFC. I don't know if we're going to find out exactly how things played out. But that was heavily reported in early October that he had a verbal agreement to take over for Steve Cherundolo, who's leaving at the end of the season with LAFC. And that was before the Atlanta United job was open. So keep that in mind when you have this conversation. But from then to now, he's going to be here. I don't know. I'm with you. I don't know what it looks like. It's unknown because it's not what it was in 2016. You have a roster that is not totally fixed, but you have a lot of guys under contract in the future that if you're going to move on from, you've got 2 buyouts to work with. You've got to find a trade partner. You've got to find a transfer window buyer to free up spots and free up cap room and free up opportunity to rebuild this roster. I think the one really good thing about this situation right now, Tata Martino worked with Chris Henderson for a year and a half in Miami. They know one another very well. They've worked together. I think you look at how Chris was involved in bringing in some of the young talent that supplemented the Super Friends. He hit on Tadeo Ashende. He's hit on other young, talented players who came in there and fit what Tata Martino wanted. The fact that they've worked together for a year and a half really makes me feel better about how they work together here.
Yes. And I think, too, there's been maybe a little bit of an incorrect narrative out there about just how involved Tata was in building the 2017 roster. I certainly think he had input. I certainly think that they were trying to form a playing group that would best fit the style with which Tata would want to play tactically. But I think there's this narrative out there, and I don't understand how it got started, that it was Tata who recruited and built that 2017 group. And in reality, no, that was Carlos Bocanegra. I'm sure with Tata's input, and I'm sure with
Yeah.
the ideas that Tata had. This is I'm really fascinated to see how this goes. And I want to ask you, when you come into an expansion team, you're building from scratch. You obviously have more space to go out and mold a team in a certain way because you're not navigating, as you said, like buyouts and contracts that already exist and things like that. You're literally starting from scratch. What we know and understand about the current Atlanta United roster tells me, at least, and I hope you would probably see it the same way, that you're not going to be able to wipe out this entire roster and start from scratch. Not even close. I
No.
think probably the majority of the roster that finished the 2025 season for Atlanta United will be here to start the 2026 season. Now, caveat, majority could mean 50% plus one. So I'm not saying it's going to be, 24 out of 28 guys, but the majority. With what has been assembled so far, and quite frankly, I thought they made moves in the summer transfer window that fit how Ronnie Dyla wanted to play. Alzate in particular, with the relationship that he had with Ronnie Dyla, and Alzate's here for multiple years, is what is going to be left of this current playing group, plus the few players you can bring in, going to work with the way that Tata wants to do this tactically?
Yes. And I want to get way out in front of this because you talk about narratives being incorrect. This is extremely frustrating because we've talked about this so many times. Tata Martino is not going to come in and pick every player on the roster and make every roster decision. No club in the world does that. Pep Guardiola doesn't have complete control over Manchester City's roster. Luis Enrique doesn't have complete control over PSG's roster. Vincent Kompany doesn't have complete control over Bayern Munich's roster. Why would Tata Martino have that here?
Mm-hmm.
Especially knowing that he's only going to be here for a short period of time. You need to, and in this case, yes, you have brought in a manager in terms of Tata Martino following Ronnie Dyla. It is not a complete and utter rewriting of the game model. There will be differences, of course, but the ideas of wanting the ball, wanting to dominate with possession, wanting to be intense with counter pressure and win the ball back high up the field, those are consistent. How you get there can be a little bit different. So the way you build a club is the club leadership, your director of soccer, in this case, Chris Henderson, with scouting department, with ownership's input, with the manager's input, builds a roster. And Henderson has to make the final decisions. Tata Martino is going to have input. Of course, you want the input. He's not going to go out and sign players. Don't do the game that happened here before where signings you like, you attribute to the manager. Signings you don't like, attribute to the front office. That's not how this works. Tata Martino is going to have input. He has connections. He knows players. Now, he hasn't managed in South America in 10 years. So his finger being on the pulse of South America is not the same. That doesn't mean he doesn't have people and trusted input that he's going to be able to bring to the table here. You want that. The way this team is currently built, I think we saw in these last 2 years, because 2024, 2025, it was the same story going into the season. This was seen as a team that could compete for a trophy. Now, they did not. So, was the roster as good as it was thought of at the time in both of those seasons? Ultimately, no. And I think we see that now maybe a little more clearly after what we saw in 2025. Are there pieces to build around? Absolutely, there are. And it's through the middle of the team for me. Goalkeeper, you got to figure out. And that's the first time we've had this conversation in Atlanta with Brad Kazan no longer with the roster. You've got to figure out what you're going to do at goalkeeper. Come back to that. Center back, you've got 3 right now that are all starting level center backs and very good center backs in this league. Stian Gregersson's got to stay healthy. Juan Beracall is on loan from Getafe for the first half of 26. And Enea Mikai is here. Central mid, Bartosz Szlich was your best player this season. He's paired with Steven Alzate, who I think fits what Tata Martino would want to a T. Alexi Moranchuk, Miguel Almiron in front of that. Latte Lot has got to score more goals. He's in front of that. Your spine is fairly well established. Could there be a change in that? Absolutely, there could. Is it an obvious one? No, I don't think it is, because I don't think any of those guys are easy to move on from. You're talking about investment. You're talking about needing to find a partner in terms of what you do. You don't just throw buyouts out there for nothing. I think at times people think that's too easy. It's not how it works. It's not how you want it to work. Because when you buy a player out and you basically ice them in MLS, the buyout isn't an MLS roster buyout. I think people think that makes that player a free agent. It actually doesn't, the way MLS is structured. It takes them off of your books, and then they're under contract to MLS, and MLS has to find a buyer. Remember, Giovanni Dos Santos went through this with LA Galaxy, and it took a while to get him to Club America in Mexico and get that done. That leaves a sour taste in players' and agents' mouths. So you don't want to just say you're going to buy people out. You want to find trades or sales. So that spine is in pretty good shape. Can you play a 4-3-3 with what you have? You're going to need fullbacks and make a decision on 2 guys on an option on Brooks Lennon and Ronald Hernandez, on Pedro Amador, and does he fit what you want to do? And you're going to have to make a decision on the wings if you're going to play a 4-3-3. Does Moranchuk or Almiron go to the wing? Does the other one stay inside? I don't think it's a guarantee that because Miguel played as a 10 for Tata in 2018 that he plays it in 2026. He's not the same player. He doesn't have the same speed. He's going to be different. Does it work? Potentially, but it's the pieces around him that will help make that work. That opens up another wing spot. Is it Saba Lobjanidze? Is it Luke Brennan? Is it somebody new? Could you play a setup like we saw in the postseason in 2018 and like we saw at times in 2017 and 2018 with 3 center backs? And does it look like a 3-4-2-1 or a 3-5-2 or kind of how it looked in the playoffs where Almiron was more of a second forward? You kind of had the 3 center backs and 3 central midfielders and wing backs on the outside. And Almiron was in a free kind of second forward role, not really a 10 role. Can you do that? Potentially. There's a lot of different ways to make this work. Don't think a formation is rigid. Don't think that Tata's going to go out and sign players and trade players and negotiate with agents and negotiate with clubs. No. That's what Chris Henderson does. Tata Martino's input in what he wants to be able to have as many things as possible is very important. The other thing to know about Tata Martino, and we talked about this a lot in 2016, got to underline this again. He would have, when this opportunity came to him, he would have done his work to analyze it. He's very Marcelo Bielsa-like in this way. He would have done his work. He would have watched probably the majority of the games this season. He would have analyzed this team. He would have already had an idea when he sat down with Arthur Blank, with Chris Henderson, with Dimitrios Evstathiou, with Skate Offsinger of this is what I like, this is what I don't like, these are options that I would like to see to change it and make it a roster that I want to work with. He wouldn't have taken it if he didn't think he could work within the constraints of what it will take to upgrade it. He would not have taken the job. So to think that he's going to come in and say, I need 20 guys off this 30-man roster. No, I don't think he would have taken the job in that case. I just don't.
Yeah,
sorry,
I agree with you.
Extremely long-winded. I'm sorry.
No. I'm going to tee you up again. Because you mentioned that formations aren't rigid. And I remember vividly matches in the 2018 season and that was back in the day where we'd get the lineup like at quite the last minute. And they're switching to a 3-4-3 today, or they're switching to a 3-5-2, or they're switching to a 4-3-3. So, that was at points in the regular season too. I remember we got a team sheet before that LAFC game that they won 5-1. I think you and I were both very surprised at the tactical shift in that game. So, I think that point is very well taken. Mm-hmm. I think there's kind of a divergent reaction here that I'm seeing. online just in the last couple hours. But I think even dating back to last night when word started to leak out, Jason,
Right.
I think there's probably a larger subset of people who follow us on social media who interact with us, probably the larger percentage is just very, very excited about having someone like Tata bringing attacking soccer back to Atlanta, bringing that fun style back to Atlanta. And I'd like for you to maybe dive into that thought. But then also, I think there's a smaller subset, and I'm really seeing it today, who are saying, well, no, this isn't the way to go. You can't just turn back the clock and think that it's going to work again. Look at what happened with Almiron. We're doing it again. So I'd love for you to maybe address the divergent reaction that we're getting to this hire.
Yeah, it's been interesting to see. I actually was at an event yesterday, GA 100 mini pitch opening over in DeKalb County. It was very cool. Anaya Mikhai and Alexei Moranchuk played with the kids for at least an hour nonstop. It was very fun to watch. Like Alexei was having a blast. And Anaya was too. I mean, they're high-fiving kids. It was fun.
Yeah.
As I pull into the parking lot, Twitter starts to blow up and my phone starts to blow up. And I'm like, okay, great timing. It's been interesting to see how people have reacted. Neither reaction is right yet until we know what happens here, because it could work, it could not work. It, I don't think, is purely a nostalgia hire. If it doesn't work, that's what it will be called, which is unfair. I mean, he won a Supporters Shield in 2024 with Miami. So it's not like he hasn't done things to deserve to be hired. Again, there were reports out of South America from top tier sources that he was going to LAFC. He had a verbal agreement there. So it's not like he wasn't in demand. So it's not purely a nostalgia hire. It will be called that if it doesn't work. Can coming back for a second stint with a club work? Absolutely. We've seen it. We've seen it with other sports teams here in Atlanta, as you pointed out on Twitter. Worked pretty well for Bobby Cox when he came back.
Oh, yeah.
He didn't have the same success the first time, but he had some really great second run. It can happen. It can go the other way. So the idea that he's coming back a second time doesn't tell you, yes, it works or no, it doesn't. It's completely different. I think in terms of the attacking style, there's been so many things that have been said that are incorrect about the way that Ronnie Dyla wanted his team to play, the way that Gonzalo Pineda wanted his team to play. I think the only time that Atlanta United truly decided as a team, as a technical staff, to play in a more defensive manner, there's honestly two. And one of those was Tata Martino in 2018 in the playoffs. Now, it wasn't purely sit back deep and defend and counter. It wasn't what Minnesota is doing, where they seem to be allergic to actually having possession. But it was far more counter-based than the way the 2017 team started and maybe the 2018 team looked at times in the regular season. That was specifically going into the playoffs, and that was specifically with an injured, recovering from injury, Miguel Almiron. So keep that in mind. The other time was Rob Valentino's stint with the club that had great success and knocked Tata Martino's Miami out. And that was, to me, a nature of what he had to work with. He didn't have many options in the attack at that point. They had to sit back and defend more, and they did, and it worked. Those are the only two limited stints in club history that the team took on a defensive posture. Flat out. When I say defensive posture, I'm not talking about how many goals they scored. I'm talking about the way they chose to play. You can choose to be an attacking team all day long and not score goals for a variety of reasons. Ronnie Dyla, from talking to him directly and what he said to the media and what he said to the public, he wanted this team to be more attacking, to be more aggressive, to be braver with the ball. He demanded it. He wanted it. It never happened. It never clicked. It never happened for a variety of reasons. It wasn't from a want to perspective. So Tata Martino will come in and in some ways might be more conservative than Ronnie Dyla in terms of the way the team is structured. I think if you look at the Miami teams, you have to be careful in trying to draw a comparison to, like, how is Tata different as a manager? he had Lionel Messi, and that's going to change the way that you play, and that's going to change the way that you structure. You don't have that with Atlanta. So you have to figure out how to get the best out of your two creative players in Alexei Miranchuk and Miguel Almiron. You have to figure out how to be secure defensively. And is that going to be with three center backs? Is that going to be with two? Is that going to play out of a double pivot in the midfield? Is that going to see either Sleesh or Alzate push higher and maybe be more of an 8? Could you play, as I said, either Almiron and probably be Miguel? It could be Miranchuk. Are you going to play them as kind of a second forward and play more of a 3-5-2 and have a forward duo? All of those things are on the table. Formation doesn't tell you how attack-minded a team is going to be. It does not. Because a formation, you can call it a 5-3-2. I can call it a 3-5-2, and it's the same thing. I can call it a 5-2-3. You can call it a 3-4-2-1. It's the same thing. It's how you want to play. What are the principles of play? Generally, Tata Martino teams want the ball. Generally, they are teams that counter press high up the field. Not always. And we saw that line drop from 17 to the end of 18. The Peachtree press was really a thing in the first half of 2017. And then Tata and his staff realized these guys are going to run themselves into the ground if we continue to do that. We got to back off a little bit and pick our spots. And the team kept the ball a little bit longer for periods of time as those 2 years went, and they pressed in a little bit different way. They dropped a little bit. They picked their spots to press. They were a little more conservative, and in the postseason, they were very conservative. Tata Martino is going to want to get numbers forward and score goals, just like previous Atlanta United managers have. What I hope for is that he has the players to do it. I hope that the players take on what he wants them to do better than they did under Ronnie Dyla, because that just didn't happen. They didn't do the things that he wanted them to do, and you heard it in his frustration. I hope that those things happen. That's what will define if this is successful or not. But he's going to have to make a decision, as he did going from Toronto on decision day in 2018 to NYC in the playoffs, a week later.
Mm-hmm.
I need to be a little more secure defensively. I need to have an extra center back. I need to reshape this team a little bit. Does he make that decision from the jump here? Does he play a 4-3-3 or some form of that? I don't know yet. And I think it depends on what you do with the wide players in the offseason in terms of what you have to work with. Do you get wing backs? Do you get wingers? Do you get guys who can do a little bit of both? That's the part that will dictate to me what the shape is. But the way the team plays, they're going to want the ball. They're going to want to get numbers forward. They're going to want to score goals. I think those are the things. They're going to want to play on the front foot. Those are the things that Tata Martino's teams do.
And by the way, while trying to be more secure defensively, they still scored 3 goals against NYC in the home leg. They still scored 3 goals against Red Bulls in the home leg. They had 2 goals in the cup final and probably could have had more if he didn't close it shop.
Does not tell you if a team is offensive or defensive.
No.
Because going to a third center back didn't make them more defensive. It made them more secure in ways, but not defensive.
You want to attack maybe another elephant that has walked into the room here in coincidence with this Tata Martino hiring?
Has it walked into the room, or has a door cracked open?
Maybe a door is cracked. Honestly, I don't know if Tata's hiring had any effect on the crack in the door.
Right. I don't think.
But, Tom Bogert is reporting that Joseph is leaving San Jose and that he is keen on a return to Atlanta United. I'll just start with this. I'll kind of float the pitch to you. I think we need to remember 2 things when it comes to Joseph and the potential coincidence that could occur here. Number 1, I think if there's any possibility of Joseph Martinez coming back to Atlanta United, Joseph is going to have to accept a different role than the one he had in 2018 or 2017 and 18 when Tata Martino was here the first time. And I don't know where Joseph's headspace is as far as being willing to accept that different role. Number 2, I think Joseph and Tata, and Joseph has grown up a lot. Let me stress that. But um, it was not a 100% harmonious relationship between Joseph and Tata here
No.
the first time. Now, Joseph has grown up a lot. Tata has probably grown up a lot. But and you tell me if you disagree, I am not looking at Tata's hiring as any kind of feint or tip or whatever that the door is opening wider for a Joseph Martinez return to Atlanta.
Yeah, I would agree with that. We did not hear about any issues with Joseph Martinez and Bruce Arena in San Jose this past season. And that would be the first time during Joseph's stint in Major League Soccer that we didn't hear about issues between him and a coach. I'm serious.
Yeah.
We saw it here. Look back at the games at the end of 2017. There was friction between Joseph and Tata and the way that Joseph was being subbed out of games, and he didn't like it, and it was friction. It got handled because Tata's a big personality, and he handled it, and Joseph accepted that and moved on. But it wasn't always harmonious. He's not the same player that he was then, and I think for him, and it was really good to see that this season he looked the most like he looked before the knee injury at the beginning of 2020. This was 2025. Like it was such a devastating knee injury that I don't know if he's really opened up a whole lot about it. You know, I mean, we know firsthand that there were multiple follow-ups during his time in Atlanta on the knee, and he missed time. And I think the little bits that he shared of how hard it was, and I think it was emotionally draining. It was scary for him in terms of thinking, like, is my career done? It took 5 years because during his stint in Miami, I think what we saw from him here after the injury, he wasn't the same player. His time in Miami, he wasn't the same player. And he played for Tata there for a little while in Miami in 2023. In Montreal, he wasn't the same player. He looked the most like he did in 2019 in 2025 with a long time recovering. By all accounts, it was a good relationship with him and Bruce Arena. That's what's been reported. Does Tata coming back automatically mean that you go and you bring Joseph in any role? No, because I do not think Tata Martino is coming here for a nostalgia play. I don't think he's coming here for a feel good. He can be cold and calculated when he needs to be. He's coming here to win. If he thinks Joseph Martinez will help his team win, he will vouch for him. If he doesn't, he will say that too. Again, he's not going to make the final decision, but he's going to have input. And if he wants to have positive input, he will. If he wants to have negative input, he will have that as well. And he'll make that decision. You have a striker under contract right now who did not score as many goals as Joseph did in 2025. I mean, that's facts are facts. I don't see Joseph as a player that you can count on to start 34 games in Major League Soccer anymore. He's going to be 33 next season. Can he start double-digit games? Yeah. Can he play in a good number of games? Yes, but I think you do have to manage his minutes a little bit. He's not going to be the same player he was. He's not as fast as he was. That's natural, and then with the major knee injury, it's even more obvious. But can he be here and have a role? Yes, he could. He absolutely could. I don't know what direction that goes. I mean, I think then you're starting to get into this kind of a role and this kind of a situation. Because no, I do not believe, as I've seen some people do the fan fiction on, like, you're not going to buy Latte Lot out and have Joseph start 34 games. I don't think that's realistic. Are you potentially looking at Joseph in a second striker kind of role on the depth chart and perhaps playing alongside a Latte Lot at times? Maybe. I don't know if they mesh together all that well, to be honest, in terms of playing them together. But perhaps. You know, he has a good relationship with Miguel Almiron. You know, he has a good relationship with Mario Diaz, who's part of the training staff. You know, he has a good relationship with Ronald Hernandez, and he's going into an option year. So there's a lot of pieces that could make it work. I don't think it's a slam dunk either way. I don't. A lot of it depends on the salary cap, and do you have room to pay what I would assume he would want, which would be on the higher end of a rotational striker. he would want money that would probably be starting level money. Can you fit that and make it work? And does Tata Martino believe he makes the team better? I don't know the answers to that right now.
This is, at least to my recollection, Jason, from a timing standpoint, a lot different than Atlanta United's prior coaching hires. And let's just go back through that. Frank DeBoer, that was done around New Year's. In fact, I think it was New Year's Eve when it was announced, and the team opened
Pretty
training
close.
camp maybe 3 weeks later, and obviously the window opened the week after.
Yeah, and
I'm
you had just
almost positive.
ended with that one. I think was a little bit of when your season ended at the beginning of December, winning MLS Cup. So
That's true. Yes,
about 3
but I'm
weeks
just
after your final game.
that's true. That's true. But just as point of information,
Yeah,
Frank was hired, and then they kind of went right into training camp. When Heinze was hired, he was hired, and they went pretty much right into training camp.
it was December, if I remember right.
Yeah, Pineda obviously was a
Mid-season.
midseason hire, and then Ronnie. Again, I feel like it was much later in the offseason than that. Well, Atlanta United was still
They were
playing this
still
time
playing.
last year,
Yeah,
obviously.
and
So, that was absolutely a December hire.
yeah,
So this is much different in that you're making the hire on November 6th. You're probably still 2 months plus a week or two beyond that from opening training camp, and you're almost 2 months exactly from the opening of the winter transfer window.
yep.
So in that sense, this is much different for Atlanta United. And they said they conducted an international search, and we'll have Chris Henderson on with Dukes and Bell at 4:20 today on Sports Radio 92.9 The Game. And I will be curious if there's any kind of discovery, if other candidates were interviewed, and how extensive that process was. But Tata Martino gets a much longer runway than some of his predecessors in gearing up for 2026 and the opening of training camp and any potential moves that he will have input on. Again, making it very clear that he is not the team builder. He just has input in the team. But this is very different.
Yeah, he's got very respected input, but it's input. And the timing is great to have as much input as possible because you've got decisions to make on the roster. And again, Tata Martino presented, I would assume, because this is what he's done in the past. I did very extensive research on Tata Martino before he was hired here in 2016. I know the Argentine game, and I have connections then that knew him and figured out kind of how he likes to work. He didn't sit down and say, "I'm great, hire me." He came in with binders. He came in with flow charts. He came in with, "This is what I would do." So it's going to be the same thing here. When the option became real, I think he sat down with this roster and he would know, because we can pull it up too, which players are under contract past this season 25, which players you have to make an option decision on. He's going to have all that. Now, he's probably not going to dig deep into the salary cap side of it, but he's going to have an opinion on every player that you have to decide, do you want to trigger an option or not? So that's part of this process right now. You then go into all of the waiver drafts and reentry drafts and all that sort of stuff after MLS Cup. I don't think Tata's going to be scouting college players. I think the scouting department is going to handle that and bring a list and say, who do you like? Who fits? Who do you think you can work with here? And he'll have input. You're going to have a very high draft pick. And look, we've seen it here firsthand. We've seen it in this league. That number 2 pick can be a player that absolutely contributes to this team next year.
I was just going to interject. If you look at the super drafts that occurred when Tata was the manager the first time, some pretty good players came out of those.
For sure. And that's a credit to the scouting department, and it's a credit to everybody involved in the process. And it's not one person. I think when you look at what you can do with that number 2 pick, it becomes a very good potential trade piece. Yeah. Because again, it can be a player that helps you, but it can also be a player that immediately steps in and is big for you. Tyrese Spicer is somebody who has produced in this league before. they've been a player that has been helpful. You look at, last year, maybe not as much last year on those guys, but you go back, you're talking about Patrick Ajimon coming out of the draft, Duncan McGuire coming out of the draft. Can you find a fullback out of the draft? Absolutely, you can. Can you find a winger out of the draft? Maybe not. That's a little bit harder. I think you're probably looking towards the back, but maybe you find that kind of diamond in the rough striker that could be the second striker, and then that goes into your conversation about how you build this roster.
Daryl DK came out of the Super Draft.
Like, he'll be involved in that process, getting ready for the January window to open. You're probably at a point where preseason plans are at least tentatively agreed to, but you can make adaptations to that. You're at a good time to bring him in because you're going to be able to maximize his impact on preparing for 2026. And that's a good thing for everybody involved. And I think it gives this team a better chance of success for next year.
Well, just kind of wrapping things up here. And again, keep following 92.9 The Game and Soccer Down Here and all the usual channels for plenty more analysis and reaction. I'm sure tomorrow morning, Soccer Down Here is going to be just chock full of all kinds of insight. Chris Henderson will be on Dukes and Bell at 4:20 Thursday afternoon, depending on when you're listening to this. If you missed it, you'll be able to find that on Off the Woodwork. Jason and I'm sure, will be consulted upon many times by the radio station over the next couple days to give further analysis. But just to kind of give you the lay of the land of what's going to happen from here now, I don't know if Tata's in town exactly today. It's my understanding, I know he was here earlier this week. I think he may have been here up until at least yesterday. I don't know if he's here today or not. I do know there's plans to have an introductory press conference, or I guess now reintroductory press conference. I don't know what you call it.
I don't know what
a reacclimation press conference. That will be late next week.
Yep.
And then I think you're probably going to go into at least public facing a little bit of a quiet period, and then it'll bubble back up after MLS Cup when all the league roster machinations kick in and you get to Super Draft. And then it sounds like training camp opening around the time it usually does, kind of around that MLK Day holiday, maybe a little before.
Yeah, I think
sounds like this.
Before. I think like January 10th, 11th.
Yeah. So maybe a week before MLK. Yeah. Sounds like the season opening around the same time as it has the last 2 years, mid to late February. I've heard some more just kind of anecdotal stuff about what the schedule will look like, but I probably am not allowed to share. But pack your coat for week one, I'm hearing. Maybe. It's cold in Atlanta, too, so that's not really too much.
That's true.
But as far as any more Tata-related content is concerned, I'm sure late next week when they have that introductory press conference, there will be a whole new volley of information that we'll be able to come out with. And I think Tata is going to get some questions, honestly, about some of the things we've talked about here. What did his analysis of Atlanta United show him? What did convince him that he can come in here and in what I don't think anyone's disputing is going to be a relatively short window for him to be here. That hasn't been disputed by anyone.
It's a 2-year contract. We know that much.
Yeah. Yeah, and the last time he had a 2-year contract, he went 2 years, and that was it. So what makes him
his MO over his career?
That's right. So what makes him believe in that span of time that Atlanta United can go from nearly wooden spoon to champion? And what will be his philosophy tactically and also with everything else that a head coach has to do to get them there? We're going to get answers to all that when we get a chance to talk to Tata next week. But I'll just close on this, Jason. This is fun. I don't feel nostalgic in any way, shape, or form because I don't think it's a nostalgia play, but I think this is fun. I think there were other candidates out there that would have also been very, very viable for Atlanta United.
Yep.
And I still think, in fact, I would even say this. I'd go as far as to say this. If it is true that Tata Martino was going pretty far down the road with LAFC, the fact that he chose Atlanta United over LAFC sends me a signal and might send the rest of the soccer community a signal that this always is going to be one of the most desired places to coach and play in North America. And last season was bad. And Atlanta United is going to do everything they possibly can to prevent that from happening again. But even with what occurred in 2025, I don't think there's any doubt that Atlanta United's stature as one of the biggest clubs in North America has been confirmed by this move today.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, LAFC is my pick to win MLS Cup. And I don't believe that it was completely a myth that he was talking to LAFC. The reporters who reported what they did out of South America are not ones to make things up out of thin air. So the fact that Atlanta was either chosen or it just didn't quite work out with LAFC, I don't know. I don't know where that fell. I have no idea. The fact that he's here says that he believes he can win here. Now, is there an emotional pull to it? I'm sure there is. I mean, he enjoyed his time here. Is it purely nostalgia and he doesn't care about winning? Absolutely not, because that's not how he's operated. I think it says a lot about Arthur Blank's pull in terms of bringing talent to his organizations. I think that's very important right now. And I think that's a very important element of this and probably the relationship to whatever degree that he had with Tata, and Tata, the respect that he had for Arthur factors into this decision. But ultimately, it says to me that he believes with his analysis and looking at this team that he can win with some changes with this group, because you're not going to have a brand new group. That's impossible with contracts. You're going to have a different group. It won't be the group that we saw in 2025. It will be different. So it's hard to compare year to year and say, well, this was better and this was worse, so it's all on one thing. No. There's going to be quite a few changes. But Tata Martino believes he can win in his 2 years that he's going to be here in Atlanta. Does he extend? Who knows? Past that. He doesn't really typically do that. So I do hope that from an Atlanta United perspective, and I've said this consistently in general, I will reiterate it one more time. You have to build Atlanta United with Chris Henderson and the people that report to him outside of the technical staff. You have to build Atlanta United for the long haul in that section of the building. They have to think 5 years down the road. They have to look at what U16s they think can project to the first team. They have to look at guys they're scouting and projecting 5 years down the road in South America, in Africa, in Europe, in Asia, can be here down the road and fit into things. They're thinking long term. And I hope that they continue to think long term and make this club more stable in terms of the roster and in terms of the overall depth. Tata Martino and his staff on the technical side are going to think short term. They come in, they want to win. Are they going to win in 26? I hope so. Are they going to win in 27? I hope they win in both years. But they are thinking short-term project. Chris Henderson and his group are thinking long-term project while marrying the short-term desires into that. That's the challenge. And that's what you want to see come together to not just win in 1 year or in 2 years while Tata Martino is here and then totally rebuild. You want to create a foundation for long-term success. And that's really difficult in this league, as we have seen. Not just Atlanta that's had ups and downs. Others have too. Mm-hmm. Hopefully, you can get all the pieces in place. This can stabilize and then build a foundation for long-term success.
Going to be an exciting and eventful year, not just with Atlanta United, but with the World Cup too. And I'm getting more and more excited for it. Jason, I wish we were still doing games together right now. It's been hard watching the playoffs. I wish we were involved in it, but January in the preseason will be here before we know it. And in the meantime, I'm sure we're going to have plenty more content in the days and weeks to come as we hear more and hear directly now from Tata Martino.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun ride. I'll be back with AST next Tuesday. I'm sure we'll have any other bits that need to get dropped into Off the Woodwork. Make sure you are subscribed wherever you get your podcasts. And Tuesday, I'll try to have some guests come in and talk about it. Thursday, next week, Thursday, Friday, I don't know, press conference at some point. Thursday. So we'll have that next week, and we'll have content from that on Off the Woodwork. We're going to be talking about Tata Martino tonight on The Intersection after the NFL game on 92.9 The Game and the Odyssey app. I'm sure Noel White's going to have some questions about it. So we'll be digging into that. It's going to be a fun ride. Hopefully you guys are going to be with us along this ride, and we'll be back with you guys very, very soon. Have a good rest of the day.
On The Intersection tonight, by the way, expect an extensive conversation about Tata's um, coat scarf thing that he did.
The pullover, like
Yeah,
sweatshirt or sweater, like tied.
yeah,
Well, I'm sure we'll get into that. I know we're going to get into Adidas's World Cup kit drop because they had
yeah.
a whole bunch of that yesterday.
Oh,
I've
I
got
love the.
opinions. I know
By,
Noel's got opinions.
by the way, you got to talk about the U17s kits from yesterday. I love
Yep,
those. I
we'll
thought they
get into
were
that.
sharp as heck.
Yep, we'll get into all of that. That'll be Intersection, AST next Tuesday, soccer down here all the time. Yeah, soccer's going to be everywhere right now. So hopefully you'll be with us for the ride. Have a good rest of the day. See y'all.